All right, good morning. Welcome to the Benton County Board of Commissioners, what we used to call the information sharing meeting. First up,
This conference will now be recorded.
we'll do introductions. I'm Pat Malone, Commissioner.
Joe Kirby, County Administrator.
And calling in,
Danielle Brown, Health Department.
good morning.
Risa Farley, Board of Commissioners.
This is John Sarna, member of the public.
Morning, John.
Alyssa Rash, Benton County Public Information Officer.
Good morning, everybody. It's Kate Portia, Corvallis, Benton County Economic Development Office.
George Lee, Public Works.
I'm Mr. Arabia from the Benton County Health Department.
Good morning. Are there any announcements? How about any comments from the public? Hearing none. About our agenda, we've added a couple items. 5.4 will be Greg Verrett and I think Vance Croney will join us to talk about the appeal process for Planning Commission decision. And then 5.5 will be Danielle Brown talking about a letter of support for the PSH grant application. And Danielle, I think we will put 5.5 right after 5.1 so that you can be on at the first part of the meeting and then talk about the letter for the grant right after that. So I think those are the two changes to the agenda. Anything else?
I don't know anything.
All right. I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
So moved.
I will second that. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And just for your information, Commissioner Ogerow is out this week, so will not be joining us. So there have been no chair decisions since our meeting last Tuesday, so we're on item 5.1, update from what we used to call the EOC. I didn't, is Brian Lee with us? I didn't hear him, so we'll go next to Charlie Fountain and Danielle Brown. And I think usually Charlie goes first, but it's up to you.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. I might suggest that Danielle go first since we've transitioned to Department Operations Center. She's the incident commander for that, so.
Okay.
Hi, good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for inviting us here this morning. So the Health Department Operations Center is fully operational. We have had it up and going since the beginning of last week. Everybody is getting a little bit more comfortable in their role through the DOC structure with the incident command than through the previous EOC structure. We're continuing to work on the K through 12 school reopening plans, continuing to work to support the communicable disease team, and Charlie can talk a little bit more about that. And we're also continuing to work on the mask and face distribution support within the county to make sure that we get enough face coverings out for community members who need it. That face covering distribution event on Saturday went very well. They were able to hand out many face coverings. We will know the exact number hopefully today or tomorrow when they do a re-inventory of the stock that they still have. We're also looking at, with the assistance of emergency management, identifying some locations for community members who missed that event to be able to come in and pick up face coverings at some sort of public setting. There's a couple of fire stations that are willing to do it to this point, and a couple of city halls. So those will be publicized once those are verified and solidified. So we're helping to continue to support that. So that is what the DSC has been working on and will continue to work on.
I have a question.
Annabelle?
I did notice that in the paper they mentioned some of the fire halls. How about some of the rural areas, like out to Bell Fountain, Kings Valley, those areas? Are we doing anything out there?
We are reviewing how to allow access to those areas as well. We've set up locations in Monroe, Adair Village. We are looking at a location in Alsea, likely using the health center, or potentially using the health center rather. But Bell Fountain and some of those more rural areas, I know we have not identified locations for them as of yet.
Danielle, I know the governor spoke a couple times at the end of last week about case infection rates and tying that into the school reopening. Do you have any comments on if the governor's metrics change what we're doing, or how that what the governor was talking about and what we're doing, how do those two things fit together?
Yeah, we're still working with the schools, and Charlie can probably talk a little bit more in detail about this, but we're still working with the schools on reviewing their reopening plans to make sure that they're meeting those, or, working within those metrics. Some of the plans have needed some coaching, but we don't have those quite completed yet. Sarah Hartstein was working on finishing those, getting those assigned and finished earlier this week. So Charlie can probably talk a little bit more in detail about the metrics and where we're meeting or not meeting those in terms of the school reopening.
Okay, great, thank you.
I have another question.
Annabelle?
My question isn't really related to COVID, but I was curious, is the vaccine season is coming up pretty soon. Do you have an idea of in terms of the regular flu vaccines, when those begin?
I know Charlie has been working closely with our HR department, and we've had several conversations with our immunization, Cindy D'Angelillo, about flu vaccines and trying to get the message out of the importance of those this year connected to COVID. Charlie, do you know the date when those will begin?
I've not received exact dates from HR. I will say flu vaccine is exceptionally important this year. I have been working with our JIC on the state and CDC are putting out special toolkits for public information this year. They are strongly encouraging everyone to get their flu vaccine between the 1st of September and the end of October.
Okay.
They don't want people to wait past October to get their vaccination. There will be a big national push. There is special funding coming out from the CDC to every state, and in Oregon, that's being pushed through to locals. So using some standardized toolkits as well as local adaptation of that. So you can look forward to a big flu vaccine push. Most clinics and virtually all pharmacies have received flu vaccine already, at least a bit. Again, they're sort of walking this line of asking people to wait a little bit so that immunity doesn't wane too early in the season, but we do want people vaccinated early in the flu season this year, but I don't have the exact dates when HR, they're doing the contract with with the company that's doing the vaccination for our staff, and I don't have those dates.
Okay, will we have a session at the Benton County, for example?
We will have several. So in past years, their contractor has done, I think, 4 or 5 different, they do one or two at the Law Enforcement Center, 1 or 2 at Avery, a couple at Sunset, I believe 1 at the HSB. I've encouraged them, if possible, to do extras this year, but for sure we'll be doing a big push through Lilia and Alyssa's shop for encouraging staff and their dependents, their insured dependents, to get vaccinated at those clinics. But I don't have the number or the dates.
Okay.
HR manages that contract.
Charlie, follow up on that. Apparently there's some older people around, and I've heard something about a extra strength flu shot if you're above a certain age. Could you speak to that? Just in case
You
there's
bet.
any older people around.
Just in case. Yeah, there is a high potency vaccine for people 65 and older. This year, for the first time, so previously, last few years, the regular flu vaccine has covered 4 varieties of flu for different subtypes, but the high potency for older people in previous years has only covered 3. There is one formulation this year for older people that covers 4, so that's very good news. There are multiple vaccines out there that cover either 3 or 4 variants, but there is one available in the high potency range for people over 65 that does cover 4, and that's certainly the one I'm going to seek.
Me too.
Well, if I know of any people over 65, I will pass that word along, Charlie. Thanks.
Yeah, please let them know, Commissioner.
I think we interrupted Danielle. Did you have anything more for us, Danielle?
The only other thing I will update you guys on is George Looney will be moving his financial reporting to monthly instead of weekly, since we've moved to the DOC, and those costs are relatively static and mostly personnel at this point. He'll be doing those monthly, the second Tuesday of each month, unless there's a special request to do them more frequently. But as of right now, that's the plan.
And that starts immediately or in September, or?
In September, yes.
Okay, great, thank
So
you.
he will be on the September 8th call.
Okay. All right, anything else for us, or any questions for Danielle? If not, we'll move back to Charlie Fountain. And thank you, Danielle.
Yeah, thank you very much, and thank you, Commissioners. So turning to the question about schools, so we have 2 teams working on, one on K-12, one working on higher education. Higher education, of course, as you know, we've been working with OSU for several months very actively. They're very strongly taking the approach, as I have said before, of tying their on-campus policies and requirements as much as possible to their student code of conduct, and having active conversations with the municipalities as well as the county on seeing how they can best extend those off campus and try to hold OSU students to the same code of conduct, small groups, closed gatherings, masking off campus as on. So those conversations are underway, but OSU is taking a very strong approach to that. A couple of days ago, we received, a few days late last week, we received the LBCC's, what they're calling their rebound plan. We've done a first look at that and are coordinating our response to them with Lynn County. So our team that is doing the higher education review and working on that LB plan is working hand in hand with the folks in Lynn County who have the same task. You know, a minority of LB activities occur at the Benton Center, but they are important to us. We're watching that, but we want to make sure that LB is getting coordinated guidance and feedback on their rebound plan and not being bounced between the two counties with any contradictions or gaps there. Regarding Kate, yeah, any questions?
Just really appreciate that. I mean, we also have North Albany and Benton County, and it just works so much better if the information is consistent, as wide an area as we can, but at least between Lynn and Benton counties.
Yeah, absolutely, Commissioner. And as far as North Albany goes, the three Albany School District schools, we're working very closely with Lynn County for the feedback to the Greater Albany School District. For those folks, working with all our other schools, the plans have been received. We've gotten feedback to them. You had questions about the governor's guidance. And as we discussed last week, there have been some adaptations to the K-12 guidance to accommodate frontier and rural schools, primarily in Eastern Oregon, where the previous metrics and the previous guidance really were problematic, given the very small population. When you do the division and you get the percentages, you know, a single case of COVID in the county with a very small population could keep them from ever opening. So there were some adaptations to that guidance, and it gets pretty complicated, but basically they were to accommodate schools that are very small districts with enrollment of 75 and under, those that are remote or rural, so 250 students or under and more than 8 miles away from another school serving the same grade. So there's some special accommodations. We have very, very few schools in Benton County that meet that metric. So at this point, schools in Benton County, if they choose to do so, can do in-person K through 3 education. Some are, some aren't. It's very individual. Above that, it will depend on the state and local metrics, and the state is not on track. This last week's stats were a little bit better, but they need several weeks running to be cleared on a statewide level for the larger opening. And so with openings coming up very soon, the maximum allowable really be K3. You know, they're just, these are really complex, individualized metrics, and it is very difficult to make generalizations. And so with rural schools like Kings Valley, like the Alsea District, Blodgett School, there really are some individual criteria that our team is working with those managers on. But as you know, both Corvallis and Philomath are doing completely remote, at least for the initial part of the school year. And we stay in really close touch, and we will see where they go as the season develops, and as we see what happens statewide and locally when people go indoors, windows start closing, rain starts, and we'll be watching those metrics and working very closely with the schools.
Okay, thank you for that update. Do you have anything else for us?
Some good news, our lab turnaround times have improved. So this last week we were down to just right around 2.5 days average. So that was really good news. It's down, the week before was 3.5 days on average. So we're very pleased about that. Case numbers, we're also down slightly last week from the week before, but there's just a marginal change, and so we'll see where that goes. Our percentage of positive cases for the number of tests was up a little bit, so testing is being targeted a little bit more, but roughly the same number of positive cases found, and our investigation and contact tracing team continues to do a great job, and people are being responsive when we reach out, so we're able to keep our metric for cases contacted within 24 hours right very close or at 100%, which hats off to that team. They really work very, very hard on that outreach and making those contacts.
Recently, you added staff to the contact tracing crew. Are they up and running at this point?
Yeah, so those folks are all being onboarded now. Most of them have been onboarded, so training is starting today for most of them. There will be some others that will initiate training. They'll start on the 1st and initiate training next week. But 3 of the new 5 emergency hire investigators, which is the most critical need, are initiating their training today. We have them enrolled in the state database already. They have their access to that. And so once we got rolling on bringing those people on board, things moved very quickly. So we're really pleased with that. By the end of next week, all those folks will be trained up. Then they'll have about a week to a week and a half of working side by side with core staff members. And by middle of the month, they'll be working independently.
Great, thank you. Any other questions for Charlie?
None for me.
Okay.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thanks for your efforts, and thanks for the update, Charlie. Next up, George Looney with a nice, boring financial report.
Commissioners, you
Thank
do
you
have
for
this
the
in your
wonderful
email.
lead-in.
This is in your
And
email.
This is an exciting one in that this week I'm actually prepared, so I'll be covering the last 2 weeks, the week ending August 7th and the week ending the 14th. The week ending August 7th is kind of an interesting week because the EOC pretty much shut down July 31st, but the DOC didn't really start up until about the 10th. So there's kind of a week in there of something OC in between, but really the health department was already doing a lot of the DOC stuff at that time already. So a lot of changes to the spreadsheet or to the packet that I send out this week because there is now a tab on there that says County DOC, which is where we'll be recording the costs that as we're going on. But we had a meeting even this week where I don't want to get hung up too much on the definition of EOC and DOC because in a lot of cases, this is COVID-related expenses, whether they're being ran through the EOC or the DOC. We had a discussion about the videographer, that's really an EOC cost, which is 100% true, but the EOC doesn't really exist right now, so it's being ran into the DOC. So the cost is a little bit ambiguous as to where everything is going at this point. It's more of a COVID project, and where are we going? We did I did lock down the expenses as of July 31st to the EOC, mainly just to kind of say, okay, here's a line in the sand, and it's the DOC moving forward. It doesn't really change a lot. There's a little bit of things happening in the back end about where things are getting paid from or charged, not paid from, but charged to, or how they're being handled with procurements and things. And some of that's still even being worked out as the DOC is gaining its legs. And like Danielle said, they're up and running, but we're still figuring out a few changes in process. So there is a DOC tab now. On the front, there is now a DOC column that shows the DOC expenses separately, and then of course the total. The other big changes were on the graphs, partially due to the length of this event going on. The very first graph that showed the expenses by operational period had gotten so much data on it that it was getting so small it was hard to read. So instead of being by operational periods now, it's by month. So you'll see certainly fewer bars, but that'll give us the month. And then I've added a graph that's down on the lower right side that says DOC costs. That's going to be our operational period starting as of August. So it's kind of a combination now of those two graphs that will show what we've been doing on a weekly basis and then a monthly basis as well. So those are kind of the biggest changes in the formatting. And probably the other big change is that I'm not including anything from the city at this point. As of the stand-up of the DOC, we are not including the city's payroll or their expenses as well. Not a reason to with it as a DOC. If we go back to the EOC and we're pulling in staff from the city, then that will make more sense, and we'll restart that at that point. There were some significant expenses over these two reporting periods. The first one, in the first week, there was a $10,575 expense that was for the cleaning of the Avery complex after we had a positive case out here, and there was a deep cleaning that was done. So that was charged to the project. And in the week ending the 14th, there were really three significant costs. One was a payment to Dr. Thompson, which is an ongoing expense. Second was a payment to Chance for reimbursement for the homeless hotel and motel costs. And that was a very significant cost. It was $34,465.38. And the last significant cost was again, not really a cost, but it was the reconciliation of our estimated payroll to actual payroll for the county, and that was $21,079. So they're significant charges. That last one is really just kind of the reconciliation and the catch-up for that. That is pretty much, there is a couple of new grants coming in that I'm still kind of running down some of the information on. So we'll have, I think the next time I present, we'll have a little bit more information on some additional grants that we've received. But that is pretty much it. If there are any questions.
One came up.
Would like to shut off on me?
One came up from a meeting I attended last week about and this may be for Charlie, but there's a, and I think it's for N95 masks, kind of an exotic cleaning facility that's in the Eugene area that's being way underutilized and is likely to be shut down. Do you have any comments on that? What will that hurt our effort at all?
I don't have a lot of detail. I can look into that, Commissioner. The last information I had was that Samaritan was sending unsoiled N95s down there to be reconditioned, but then stockpiling those. It wasn't their preferred use. They were putting those away for possible future use, but continuing to use new materials as much as possible unless and until things really get desperate again. If they do, I had not heard that there was a chance of that facility. This is the first I've heard of that. I will look into it.
It was, the cost was, going from memory, but hundreds of thousands of dollars a month and can do hundreds of thousands of masks, and a few thousand were going through, and half of them, like you mentioned, were too soiled to clean, and so they got tossed out. So very high expense and pretty low usage. Like George will appreciate this, off by a couple zeros as far as capacity and how it's being used. But I didn't know if that would, if we were using that and if that would affect us in any way. It doesn't sound like it would, but my take from the conversation was counties would have, or entities would have to make a pretty good pitch to keep this thing open because of the great disparity between the cost and capacity and how little it was being used. So.
Yeah, again, this had not come to my attention until just now. I will follow up with Brian and Dave. This was basically being coordinated through the hospitals and emergency management and first responders. So I will look into it because this had not come to my attention.
Okay.
Just adding a little bit to that, from an EOC/DOC perspective, we haven't been able to get our hands on many N95 masks.
Right.
The face coverings we're handing out are the KN95s,
Okay.
so we haven't had any need to use that resource for the cleaning and resanitation of those. We just haven't had enough N95 access to be able to need that.
Okay.
Yeah, this facility was really just for N95, so really strictly serving medical and first responder, hospitals, clinics, and EMS.
Okay. Well, thank you. Any other questions or comments for our DOC folks? Hearing none, we'll go skip to 5.5, and Danielle Brown going to tell us about a letter that she wants our approval on to apply for a grant.
Yeah, good morning again. So we have had some communication with Corvallis Housing First, who is pursuing a permanent supportive housing grant. This is a second round of the same grant that came out late, about this time last year. This is a technical assistance grant to assist with developing additional permanent supportive housing resources within the counties that are approved for the grant. So we did do this letter of support for Corvallis Housing First September of last year towards the application for this permanent supportive housing grant. Corvallis Housing First is applying for this grant with the assistance of Dev Northwest as one of the primary land developers towards identifying and utilizing additional permanent supportive housing resources. Permanent supportive housing is really designed to help individuals transition from homelessness to being housed in a supportive environment that can assist with that transition. You know, we often find individuals coming from homeless settings to being located in a house and needing assistance adjusting to that new environment. So permanent supportive housing assists with case management, additional resources, things like skills training on housekeeping and budgeting and food management to help individuals be successful long-term in whatever housing resource they're able to access. The grant proposal that is being put out is one to allow Benton County Behavioral Health to be one of the primary service providers for the wraparound services, so for behavioral health services and supports, with Corvallis Housing First and Dev Northwest in a collaborative effort to manage these permanent supportive housing units. So this grant will allow for a technical assistance period of 6 to 9 months where we receive technical support from the Corporation for Supportive Housing and Oregon Housing Coalition to develop permanent supportive housing resources in Benton County and have them continue to be successful. So I did submit to you guys in your email yesterday afternoon a draft of the letter that we are proposing to be written in support of this grant for Corvallis Housing First.
All right. I read over the, I guess, Danielle, do you just need our support for the letter and going forward on this project, or what's your goal here today?
Yeah, I do need your support for the letter, and this is a letter that will be signed and endorsed by you, Commissioner Malone. So it will be addressed and signed by you as the supporter for the county.
All right. Do we need a motion?
Commissioner Malone, I do suggest a motion.
Okay.
I would so move that letter be signed and passed on.
Okay, I will second Commissioner Jaramillo's motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries, and I will be glad to sign this. Danielle, I read it over when it came in yesterday, and it sounds like a great effort. I guess, what are the chances of success in getting this grant, being successful?
That's a good question. The grant that was written last year, we were Corvallis Housing First was 2 spots away from receiving the grant. They, of course, focused the grant in the metro areas. So my hope is that we have a pretty good chance of getting the second round grant, given that we were really close the first time around. The sticking point last year was that we didn't have a location identified. And I believe that Dev Northwest and Corvallis Housing First have been working really closely to have a location identified within the county for this round of grants.
Great. Any other questions for Danielle?
None from me.
Well, thank you for your efforts, and we'll cross our fingers that we're successful this time.
Thank you, Commissioners.
So, all right, we're back on track as far as the agenda of 5.2 quarterly update from the Corvallis and Benton County Economic Development folks. Kate, Portia, take it away.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Thanks for having me on. So nice to see your faces. I thought I would just take a little bit of time this morning and go over with you verbally some of the accomplishments for our office and team over the last quarter. And then forthcoming, we have a really attractive annual report that we've drafted up. It's the first time we've done this, and we've been waiting on just a couple of economic indicator charts from our friends at the state. But we've got that forthcoming, and the reports from our partners from the SBDC and Oregon Rain as well. But I won't take a lot of time, but just sort of wanted to touch base with you all. Also, if you don't mind, after that, funny, like Danielle, we also have a grant potential that we were hoping to discuss with you. It's just come about, it's got a tight deadline, and so we'd like to just take a moment to discuss that with you as well. So in terms of our fourth quarter work, I think you guys remember at the end of the third quarter, the reporting that I did back then, I only included through March 16th because that was sort of the delineator for our office at the beginning of the COVID crisis, where we really then pivoted toward our emergency response and then economic recovery work. So really what I'm going to be talking about today is that time frame from March 16th through the end of the fiscal year, June 30th. And I think you guys know a lot of this because we've been touching base with you along the way and keeping you apprised of what we're doing. But I did want to let you know a couple of items. So, of course, we do your business retention and expansion outreach and talking with businesses. We surpassed our goal of 150 business touches. Even pre-COVID, we were already at 170. But then since then, as you guys know, we've been making this effort to speak directly with businesses all throughout Benton County. And as of June 30th, we had 901 business touches in Benton County. And this, this is not just our team. This was our team. It was Tracy as part of the EOC, picking up the phone, calling our businesses, checking in and saying, are you okay? Do you need anything? Are you aware of our grant program? And we feel like that that personal touch has really been beneficial. So we're pretty pleased with how that's been going. In terms of financial efforts through the crisis, of course, we rolled out the loan program for you guys, got that money out the door. We currently have the grants open for Business Oregon. I want to talk about those in just a little bit. And implemented both the public right-of-way program in Corvallis. I shared that out with the city managers in the other areas of Benton County as well, so they'd have access to that policy if they needed it. And another piece was really just the communication. And I think you guys know, getting the word out, using videos, doing the online Let's Keep Connected. We ended up doing 22 of those online business forums for businesses where they could tune in. Catherine, our Spanish-speaking teammate, did 6 Latinx events on Facebook for our Spanish-speaking businesses. That was in conjunction with our partnership through SBDC. So really making sure to provide materials and information and opportunities for our Spanish-speaking businesses in Benton County as well. I think just a couple of things I'd like to highlight for you. One, not all counties have done it this way. In fact, I'm going to be speaking on a panel at the OEDA conference about this. But the opportunity to have the Economic Development Office tied in with the Emergency Operations Center has been incredibly valuable for our businesses, right? Being able to be lockstep with public health, pushing out the information they need, and making sure that our businesses were able to stay open and stay safe with the latest and greatest information. This just in, not all counties have been doing it that way, right? And I continue to hear from folks around the state from our regional solutions team that Benton County has really been a shining star in the way that we've coordinated this effort, not just city, county, but also businesses and citizens and public health and economic development. So I guess I just wanted to say thanks and express gratitude for including us in that process and for the partnerships and all the work of public health and how they've included us in their work. I think it's really, really been beneficial for our businesses. Speaking of partnerships, you know, I know you guys know, but, you know, we help fund Oregon Rain, who's continued to be out there helping our entrepreneurs, the Foundry, but I did want to especially call out the Small Business Development Center. Our office passes through additional funds to them to basically do extended small business services in Benton County, and we think that's a very worthwhile investment. And one of the things I wanted to point out that maybe you weren't aware of is that during these phone calls and during the crisis, not only has the SBDC been by our side, helping with the Latinx Facebook event, helping our businesses, but when we've been making these phone calls, most of the time the businesses are saying, we're okay, thank you so much for checking on us, we appreciate it. Sometimes they say, hey, we do need information about the money or about reopening guidelines. And in a few cases they say, we are really hurting, we need help. And in those cases, what we've been able to do is have this seamless handoff over to the Small Business Development Center and getting those businesses connected with the mentors, with the professionals at the Small Business Development Center. I told Jeff Flesh, their acting director, that process has been seamless. And again, I think it's really benefited the businesses of Benton County that we, both directions, are able to make these connections with our partners, right? It's a really, really excellent setup that we've got and really excellent partners we're so happy to be a part of. It's funny, you know, I think you guys know we've all been doing, you know, it's varied and some of the calls are tapering down in terms of frequency, but different, you know, our office was handling weekly regional calls with our partners. We tapered those down to be every 2 weeks now to check in, let them know about resources that are available, kind of cross-communicate. We are part of the governor's regional solution team related to economic recovery. Those were weekly. We've tapered those down to monthly. But out of that, again, I'm a silver linings girl, but out of that came this really cool opportunity where the different communities that have college towns, we now have a call set up with them. So it's going to be us, Eugene, Bend, Ashland, to talk about what we are doing in terms of economic recovery as counties and cities with colleges located in them, because we're sort of a special bunch, right? And so we kind of forged this new work group, and we're really excited to be a part of that. Underway, you know, I think you guys know, but we, you know, like our friends at Public Health, we had the 11,000 KN95 masks that were slated for businesses. We have been working on getting those out the door. We're delivering those in boxes of 50 to businesses who request them. And so far, we've made just under 100 deliveries, about 98 businesses we've been able to hit up. When we visit them, we talk with them in person. Again, check in, let them know about the grant program that's open, and treat it as an opportunity to do kind of a mini business retention visit to just check in on their health, if you will. Let's talk a little bit about the grants that are open right now. So, as you guys know, Business Oregon has some grant money. The round 2 is open now. That's the funds that went to the CDFIs. Round 3 is the funds that Benton County received. That's not yet open now. We actually have the contract, and I've got an email out to Vance to work with him on reviewing the contract, so we'll get going on those. But I do want to let you guys know, not just us, but across the state, we're having some challenges because, as you may recall, these funds, in order to be eligible for these grant funds, businesses cannot have received either PPP or EIDL funds, right? And unfortunately, at this point in time, the vast majority of businesses have received those funds. And so our partners at Community Lending Works it's a challenge to get these funds out the door. We were told that the round 3 funds that are forthcoming would remove that stipulation, but when I received the contract, and Vance and I will chat about this, but in fact the way it actually reads is, yes, they're eligible, but there's a subtraction formula. So any funding they received through either PPP or EIDL is subtracted from any money they could get from Business Oregon, which quite frankly means they won't get any money through the grant program, right? It's really not a great fix. So I wanted to, one, alert you that this is a challenge, not just for us in Benton County, but across the state. We, at the state level, are working with a coalition of folks. We've had a number of phone calls and are actually going to work to address this legislatively. And in fact, had a call yesterday with the Oregon Economic Development Association, of which I'm past president, and Seth is vice president over in Albany, Lane County, City of Beaverton, the chamber group for the state. All of us have the same concern, AOC and LOC. So we've got a pretty tight group that is going to be working on this legislatively to see if we can't open this up and allow businesses who've received PPP or EIDL to be eligible. Because otherwise, not just Benton County, lots of folks around the state are going to have to be giving this money back, right? And if their goal was to get it out to businesses and in their hands, it's not looking like we're going to be able to achieve that goal. So I guess I just want to let you know we're working on that one legislatively. And if we need some support, we'll definitely let you know on that one. Other things upcoming, we have we're working on another online business forum. We're getting a lot of questions from businesses about what they need to do if they have an employee or a customer test positive. So we'd like to just do a quick forum, let them know the answers on that. And I also wrote an op-ed piece for the Gazette-Times that they said they're going to work on getting in here in the near future, which is really about what citizens can do to help keep our businesses in Benton County open. And the other item on the horizon that really I think is going to be a big topic is childcare. Commissioner Ojiro looped me into a work group that she is a part of with the United Way, the Boys and Girls Club, many other organizations. So our office is at the table for those conversations as well, because it's going to be a huge challenge for our families and our employees in Benton County. So that's kind of the summary of what we've been doing. I know that was a lot, so I want to stop here and see if you all have any questions that I can answer.
I had a couple, Kate, one's more of a comment. I really appreciate the coordinated effort, kind of rearranging the furniture to make sure that we have as many partners and cooperators as possible, and a structure that didn't exist 6 months ago. And you and your team are to be congratulated for figuring out who potential partners are and getting them on board and working together where maybe there was little to no interaction before this event. And you mentioned needing a legislative fix for the round 2 and 3. I assume that means really soon. Is there another special session on the horizon, and is that what you're aiming for?
There is, and I believe it's in September. I don't know the exact date, and yes, that's exactly what we're aiming for. The round 2 funds, the CDFIs have pretty tight timelines on getting those out the door, and once Benton County executes your contract for round 3, you'll have 45 days to get that information out the door, to get the money out the door. So it's a pretty tight time frame, and that's why, yes, we're really trying to hit them up now. I will say, we have pushed on Business Oregon since this is their program, and the message we've received from them is that the decisions about this specific policy were made at the e-board level. And so the word that we received back from Business Oregon was that they suggested that we push at the legislative level, and so that's what we're doing. But again, we're feeling pretty good. We've got the Association of Oregon Counties, the League of Oregon Cities, really the big players. Everybody's feeling the same constraints. So I think we've got it teed up to make a very hopefully compelling argument and get some change implemented ASAP.
Well, yeah, our businesses need help, and here's the money. Oh, but you can't have it. And I understand the theory of helping businesses that got overlooked in the first round, but if the current structure isn't working, then we need to change that, and if the board can be of any help, please let us know, because that's just frustrating to have rules in the way of getting the job done, well-intentioned rules, but it's not working.
Indeed, and I think you've hit on it exactly, Commissioner Malone. I think that the rules, they made sense in May, right? There was a lot of PPP and EIDL were just coming out. There were reports that minorities were being disproportionately excluded from those programs, and I think the goal was to create a program at the state level that would cast a net to capture the folks that hadn't been able to take advantage. But now time has moved on, and so many people have been able to take advantage of PPP and EIDL that it's now an exclusionary measure. So we will work that one as well as we can. I should have mentioned too, because I know some of my public health friends are still on this phone call, but just again, continued gratitude towards them. Rocio has been working really closely with Corinne on reach out to our minority businesses, making sure that they're aware of the grants, that we're getting them the masks that they need, and we're really grateful for the partnership.
Okay, well, we're really grateful for your efforts. This is, other people have described this kind of process as kind of jumping off a cliff and assembling the glider, the airplane, as gravity is working its magic, and I mean, we've all had to be flexible and creative, and you and your folks have done a great job, and I'm not at all surprised that you were talking about the EOC economic development connection, and that maybe a lot of counties aren't structured that way, hadn't figured that out, and so looks like we had the right people at the right time to do what we can to move things forward. So any other questions for Kate? No. Do you have anything else for us?
Yeah, so real quickly, we will send on then the reports through Teresa to your office. So we'll have a really nice looking annual report that you can nerd out on and really check out if you'd like to. And the partners have some reports as well. So we'll send those all in so that you've got those. If at some point you'd like a kind of a summary annual presentation from the partners, let us know. We're always happy to bring them in, and I know they would love to say hello, but I also know you guys have a lot going on, so we can play that one by ear. So if we're done with that piece, I would like to talk a little bit about this opportunity for a mobility grant that our team is pursuing with Pacific Power. And I saw Catherine is on the call also, so while she wasn't anticipating it, if you guys have any hard questions, maybe we'll ask Catherine to pop on and she can answer them for us, but I think this is a pretty straightforward one. Basically, Pacific Power has a round of grants open related to electric mobility. And what our office has done some research, and we'd like to establish a rebate program that would make electric bicycles affordable for our low to moderate income folks in Benton County. So we think this is a pretty cool idea. It's about creating affordable transportation options in Benton County. We are anticipating a grant request of $60,000. And the notion here is that we would use the funds to cover somewhere between 60 and 90% of the purchase cost of somewhere between 40 and 70 of these electric bikes and the appropriate safety equipment. The cool thing is we've already got our friends at the Council of Governments have pledged $10,000 towards this. Our office has pledged the staff time to put the grant together and run the grant. That would be our contribution. And there's also a need for some upfront costs to be paid, which we would pay and then be reimbursed back in. So the participants that we're really aiming at here are low to moderate income residents in Benton County, and they will need to have their household power through Pacific Power. But I think, as you guys know, Pacific Power serves most of Corvallis and Palomas and Monroe and some pockets of unincorporated Benton County. So we think this could be pretty cool, wide-reaching program to create transportation for folks. So there's some more details in here, but really what we were asking for was just a letter of support from the commissioners that you would think this would be a cool idea for our low-income residents in Benton County and looking at new and creative transportation options for them.
Great idea, and I think we would be glad to have a letter of support. I guess if you can send over some specifics, what should be included in the letter, that sounds great. There are some electric bikes around, but I think that has real possibility for getting more bikes out there and more people able to get around where they couldn't on an old-fashioned bike without batteries and motors, and so.
Yeah, no, these are pretty cool. Jerry is a big fan, of these, and I think, and of course, we have such bikeable communities in Benton County. So we just thought this was a neat opportunity, and really trying to think of ways to help our low-income folks in Benton County think about and have different transportation opportunities that may typically not be affordable for them. So if it sounds good, we will draft up kind of some bullet points or a rough outline of a letter of support. We can send that and route it over to Teresa, so she can handle that. We'll send also the details of the program that Jerry and Catherine worked up, so that you guys have that available as well.
Great. Catherine Duval, do you have anything to add to Kate's report from the Pacific Power point of view?
No, I don't think so. I think she said it pretty well. I think the one thing I would add is that this also falls in line too with some of our action items for the Climate Action Advisory Board city. So it kind of just checks a lot of boxes of things that we're hoping to accomplish.
Okay. Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you.
Well, looking forward to seeing those informational points in our office. And what's the timeline, Kate?
Yeah, I think they're on a pretty, and Catherine, jump in if I get this wrong, but I think the goal is, the deadline is at the end of this month, so we will get this over to you ASAP in terms of the letter of support, and so they can finish up the application we got off the door.
Yep, next Monday at 5 p.m. the application deadline.
Okay. Good. That nothing like a nice close deadline to help keep things moving. So.
Indeed, I like, Commissioner Malone, I like to say that it's not that I'm a procrastinator, it's that I'm deadline driven. So we will all be driven by this deadline. How about that?
There's no difference, Kate.
Oh, good.
All right. Do you have anything else for us?
No, again, thank you. We really value the relationship with Benton County, and we are just very proud to be, the office to help you guys with economic development, and just really appreciate you and you putting your faith in us to do this important work for Benton County. So thank you.
A little while ago, you briefly mentioned the challenges concerning childcare, and there is no doubt about that with so many right now. In I guess Charlie Fountain's report earlier was for Benton County, and I think it's kind of typical across the state. For in-person at school, K through 3 is what's on the books now, and my understanding from what Governor Brown talked about last week, in order to have any chance of further opening up to more grades, Oregon would have to significantly get our average infection rate down. And one thought I had with that, there's a lot of parents that have had kids at home for about 6 months now, and I think the idea of compliance with wearing masks and social distancing, and I would think we'd have a lot of motivated enforcers, that parents that would really like their kids to at least have a couple days of physically being at school. And so keep us posted on how that's shaping up. But like a lot of this, it's up to us to behave ourselves, and it's being in a college town presents challenges. I'm glad you're talking to other college towns to see how they're doing, and like everything that's happened in the last 6 months, a lot of this is new, and what approaches will be effective and what won't, and but I think the bottom line is we have, to a degree anyway, it's in our hands in order to get our rates down. We can have school. And I think that that word needs to get out, because we really don't have much time to get our house in order. But certainly appreciate your efforts, and this was you touched on a lot of items that you have been working on, and looking forward to the annual report. At the beginning of, before you started, I was going to say, well, has anything much happened in the fourth quarter?
Just a little.
Yeah, and really appreciate having you and your team as partners.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Thank you. All right. Next up, 5.3. Jaime Sarabia. Are you with us?
Yeah, there he is.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, commissioners.
And you're going to give us an update on the King Legacy Advisory Committee.
Exactly, yes. It's been a a while. Yeah, the King Legacy Advisory Board for the City of Corvallis. See you from home. So thank you for giving us this opportunity to be working from home. And the IT department, I just want to say that I give full gratitude for all the help that they've done to help set this up for all of us.
Yep.
But please excuse any background noise from my 3 kids, the dog, the neighbors that might occur. But yes, I'm going to give you an update. It's been a while. I think the last update was in December because of what's been going on around the world. So I'd like to update you pre-COVID, because pre-COVID things are a little different than post-COVID, I guess. They're really post horrific George Floyd incident and what's been going on with the King Legacy Board there. I guess I could start from the beginning, from January, when we had a Martin Luther King Jr. Celebration event happen. We had brought in Boots Riley for a speaking event and a free showing of his latest film at the Whiteside Theater, and that was overwhelmingly successful. There were a few dozen people that came to the showing at the Whiteside Theater, and there was over 500 people that showed up and attended the speaking event that he had, which he also, during the event, signed a petition that I'll talk about later for the Bias Response Initiative that's going on now. But since the event was so successful in February, the King Legacy Advisory Board was already planning to try to make 2021 event. But that's kind of been put on hold now, of course, due to COVID. We meet monthly usually, but our last meeting had occurred in February, and then COVID hit. And then all boards and commissions were not meeting with the city, except for city council. So we didn't meet in March, April, May, and then things changed, of course, in late May, June. And then we met again in late July. We're going to meet again in a couple of days here and do it virtually now. Our focus now, from Mark Shepard, city manager, and from the city council, is to focus on the Bias Response Initiative that has been put forward and approved for funding from the city council. They approved $150,000 for the fiscal year to get a program running, which the King Legacy Board, along with many members from the King Legacy Board on a Corvallis Action Council, have been working on since summer of 2019. Actually, been working on a petition. We were able to get 4,500 or so citizens so far that have signed this petition before the funding was allocated. That is to have this occur, and there were over 50 people reporting their personal experiences of bias in the area that they've had since 2017 to go along with this petition that was presented to the city council that then helped to get them to fund this allocation for this initiative. That's why they decided to virtually start meetings again to help this get going. The King Legacy Board needs to help figure out how the city will be doing this. Mark Shepard spoke to us on that July meeting with his ideas and what needed to occur to get things going. The initial petition had asked for a individual opposition within the city to help lead this, along with funding for training and for development of equity and inclusion within the city, because there are no current positions in the city that do such work. the meeting in July didn't go so well with the ideas that Mark had, because of the difficulty, of course, understandably, with coming up with job descriptions and coming up with the whole hiring process of getting it, getting a position out there. It takes some time to do. So by the time they're able to hire someone, it's it's almost halfway through the fiscal year already. So Mark was saying, really, we need to get everyone together on the same page with varying organizations, with the county, with school districts, with OSU, to come up with a advisory group in a way to figure out how to address these issues in our community. And then he was thinking of how to keep things going long term, and making sure that things will continue, that things won't, momentum, whatever, won't get lost. Momentum will continue to continue on. And thinking of the best way probably to do so is to see if we can get OSU, since they already have their own bias response program that they've been running since 2016, would they be able to, if the city was to give them some funding, to continue that citywide, and then maybe get other partners involved in the future to make it be a regional program, so that way many in our community can feel safe and welcome and be able to report any incidences that they experience. The King Legacy Board had responded with saying that is true, that there's more of a two-pronged approach that is needed, and then Mark agreed that yes, more of a long-term, more of a short-term approach, and a longer term would be yes, trying to get a regional, everyone involved, because bias and hate doesn't end at the city limit lines. It's nationwide. It's a problem everywhere. So it's true that we do need a regional cooperation of everyone in this together. But the recent, but the Legacy Board mentioned that the school district has created funding for positions for people to lead this agenda of equity and diversity and issues in the community. And the county has recently reclassed someone in the health department to do so. And they recently announced a position that's been created in the county, which we're all very excited about. The board mentioned the city needs to also provide someone to lead the city's initiatives and to help coordinate with all these other leaders and other organizations in the region, which I think today we're going to have a discussion about how that's going to occur. Mark realized that there does need to be I think what he calls a project manager to help lead this for now, but in hopes that, yes, it becomes a larger community led initiative. And I think that is where we're at today. And we will be having another meeting in a couple of days.
Okay.
Virtually, of course.
Okay. Annabelle?
Hi, Ben. The university have had
Organizational change for the last 20, 30 years, and when they've had these committees, and they actually have an office dedicated to this work with staff. So it's not like we have to reinvent the wheel here. I mean, there is experience already. And what has not happened probably as well as it should have was the coordination with other jurisdictions around, like the city and the county or even surrounding areas. It was really pretty focused at Oregon State. That there was the Board of Visitors that I still think it exists, but there was 20, 25 people from around the state that advised the president of the university on that. So they've been pretty active. So what I'm trying to say is, there's some work that's been done that can be modeled after, and how we be part of that, then you do have a much more coordinated effort in this process. But it's not like we have to reinvent the wheel here. There's people around here that with that experience, and especially at the university.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And I guess Mark mentioned that he reached out to them years ago about some coordination, but that they were really focused on getting things up at the university up and running, and also, again, there was just no one at the city that was a point person for them to coordinate with, other than with Mark, I guess. So he's hoping that this time, and it probably will happen this time, that there'll be more of an effort from everyone to help coordinate these initiatives.
I guess I would second Annabelle's comments about coordination of efforts. We just finished talking about our economic development folks, and especially due to the COVID crisis, rearranging how we help our business folks, and identifying partners, and just bringing in the Pacific Power folks on a grant for subsidized electric bicycles, and I think being creative is the kind of word of the day, and I kind of look forward to I guess helping and making sure that, because it sounds like we're all doing a piece of this project, and make sure we figure out what best practices are, and how to expand the boundaries from campus or 509J or the county, to make sure it's a good, coordinated, effective effort. So, any other?
No,
Annabelle?
no question, but it just occurred to me that there's major groups on campus that could be working with, give a lot of information, a lot of knowledge behind. There's the African American Cultural Center, there's the Latino Cultural Center, the Asian Cultural Center, the American Indian Cultural Center, and there's students from all over the state and the country that are associated with those. So those are again other types of resources that can be engaged in all this, because these are they're being they're here for an education, but they bring experiences that are far broader than we have here. So I think that's to me, I think that's the way to get back on track on some of this issue, on some of these issues.
Exactly, yes. Yeah, the lived experiences
Yes.
is priceless, yes. And also the NAACP, the local chapter of NAACP, has been working closely with the
That's right.
King Legacy Advisory Board on this as well.
Great. Are there any other questions? Well, thank you for the report, Jaime, and looking forward to hearing the next update. The COVID crisis has kind of delayed a lot of timetables for efforts, and I think we're all figuring out how to continue our important work, mainly virtually, unfortunately. But
Yeah.
Keep us posted.
Will do. Thank you so much.
Thanks for the report. All right, next up, 5.4, discussion of the appeal process from the community development folks. I see Greg Verrett, I think, and Rebecca Taylor. Looks like you're going to handle this discussion. Good morning.
Yeah. Good morning. Thanks for fitting this topic in at the last minute. Just want to update the commissioners briefly on the status of this matter, and particularly we are needing to be prepared to send out a potential notification. So at this point, there has not been an appeal of the Planning Commission's decision. Planning Commission made a decision last Tuesday and you received notice of that, I believe, to approve with a set of conditions the conditional use application. We think it's possible, likely, that there will be an appeal, but we don't know for certain, of course. And because of the tight time frames that this matter is under due to the state laws regarding local land use decisions, we need to be prepared to initiate the public hearings process with the Board of Commissioners very quickly. So,
Greg,
yeah.
before you move on, we probably should put in the record, is this a specific land use appeals decision, or is it just a general looking at?
So this would be if we receive an appeal of the Safe Camp conditional use permit
That's
from the Planning Commission's decision of last week.
Right.
That appeal would go to the Board of County Commissioners.
That's what I wanted to
hearing.
make sure we had what the topic was that you were
Sorry.
really talking about. That's okay. Thank you.
Sure. And so, Commissioners, I'm going to email you. I'm going to email you just my kind of outline for this conversation. I just sent it to you, and this is. I'll be reading through this essentially. So, sorry, Joe. Okay, so if we receive an appeal, it'll come. The matter will need to come to the Board of Commissioners for hearing. We need to send out notification of this hearings process promptly, and we need to lay out the hearings process in that notification so that people understand how that process is going to work, because it's different than it was in the past. We're not doing in-person hearings due to the COVID-19 restrictions. So there are some things that we need to establish prior to mailing out that notification, and that's the reason I'm before you today, needing to get some decisions on a couple of items. So first, a couple of notes. We have a hard deadline of November 1st for any final decision to be rendered, and that's because of state statutory limits on the amount of time that the local jurisdiction can spend on a local land use application. So November 1st. Also, I want to point out that members of the public have had 3 opportunities to provide written comment and 1 opportunity for oral testimony thus far. So there's been significant public input, and if there is an appeal, there will need to be appropriately so additional opportunity for public comment. The public will be provided with an additional 2-week period prior to a Board of Commissioners hearing to provide written comment. And we would, in this notification to the public, as we did previously, encourage people to provide written testimony instead of oral testimony. I mean, they can certainly do both if you agree to allow oral testimony. But written testimony takes away the technology glitch factor, and we're just not able to accommodate people in the typical hearing fashion in a big room where everybody can just step up to the microphone. So, so that's a consideration as well, that there will be an additional opportunity for written testimony. The hearing would be scheduled for October 6th, and there's 2 main decision points that Vance and I discussed we need to get input from you on, direction from the commissioners. First is what time does this meeting occur? So obviously, we know most of your meetings occur during the day. There have been a few land use public hearings that the board has in the past held during the evening to accommodate more people being able to participate outside of work hours. There are pros and cons to that. Obviously, later in the day can bleed into later in the evening, which can, get into midnight hour, or hopefully we would not be anywhere near that. But there are, as the evening wears on, we tend to lose some of our mental focus. Some people are night owls, and good for them. But just from experience with the Planning Commission, going late is not ideal. Staff would recommend having an evening meeting at 5:30, say, or maybe 6 o'clock evening meeting to allow more people to participate. However, I would say that a noon meeting could work. GoToWebinar does allow people to potentially more easily participate without leaving their place of work. If their place of work is at home, they don't have to travel to the meeting place. So there's less of that need maybe for an evening meeting, but I leave that up to you for decision. And the other one, which I'll just briefly touch on, and then we can engage in discussion, is whether this to provide an opportunity for oral testimony, as we did at the Planning Commission, or to make this a written testimony only hearing, which is currently allowed under state law due to the COVID crisis. So I'll pause there and ask for any questions, and then if we could talk through those two items for a decision.
I remember you remember the gravel pit decision years back? Were you with us then, Greg?
Yes.
Okay. Well, that process took like several days of hearings. It was 1 or 2, 3 hours a day, and then we'd set another date and continued that. And you say this has to be done by November 1st?
Right.
So
we would. Sorry, I'll explain that more fully. We would set this up as an initial hearing on October 6th, and then you could continue the hearing to October 20th for deliberations and a decision. But we really can't go beyond that October 20th date. We really need to get to a decision at that date. The reason being, if we go over the statutory mandate of timeline, which ends up being November 1st, then the matter gets taken out of our hands. The applicant can file for a writ of mandamus in circuit court. It becomes not a land use matter, but a court matter. It's not a realm that I think the county wants to be in with any land use decision, particularly with one of this level of consequence for a community.
I agree. So you set October 6th is a hearing date, right? And okay. So I'm trying to think. I'm trying to think back, and don't have a calendar in front of me to look at that. But
so it's a Tuesday. It could be at your normal daytime meeting, or it could be in the early evening. I would anticipate that it will probably be a 2.5 to 3 hour meeting.
Absolutely, it would be.
Commissioners, I am looking at your schedules, and it looks clear for both of you. However, Commissioner Ojiro does have a conflict. However, I think if the board were to have it in the evening, that she could probably miss the other meeting that conflicts with this night meeting. I would also highly recommend that you consider a night meeting.
I was going there, Joe. I think a night meeting would make a lot more sense in terms of, just making sure that especially all those neighbors that want to speak to this issue have the opportunity to do that. I can't anticipate how, I suspect it would be a very, very heavy hearing, just from, the comments we're getting now, from letters and things like that. So I'm trying to think what would be the best. I guess getting written testimony, but then having an opportunity for some oral testimony would be, we could say we'd like your remarks written to us. And then if you want to participate, then you need to limit your time, depending on the number of people that would want to act on that. So do you get what I'm trying to get at?
Yes, our recommendation is to establish time limits for testimony if we do oral testimony.
Right.
Our recommendation would be 3 minutes for members of the public, 10 minutes for the applicant, 5 minutes for the applicant's rebuttal.
Mm-hmm. But having written remarks, if they want to send those in, would be really helpful to have them beforehand. Then
Exactly.
setting a deadline.
We would encourage that.
Yeah, setting the deadline of when we need to receive the written stuff by. It would have to be earlier than the October 6th.
Right. We would have it compiled and to you at least 2 weeks ahead of that October 6th date.
Okay.
And I will tell you that to date, we have, I don't know, a good solid inch worth of written testimony received already, so you'll have plenty to read.
Yeah.
Okay, one thought I had on oral testimony that evening, and I think probably a 5:30 start time is reasonable. Is it possible to limit the overall length of the meeting? Say 2.5 hours, finish by 8, and then so people know that the time limit isn't, it's not open-ended, it's not midnight, it's 2.5 hours or whatever time limit we want to put on the overall meeting, thinking that there's been a lot of opportunity for testimony already. This is kind of should be summarizing and like you say, we have a lot of written comments already. We will very likely getting more and kind of encourage people if your point's already been made several times to keep it brief and this isn't, the more words you get on your side, you win. It's not on a scale, and I've been at public meetings where it seemed like that was the thought was, well, I'll keep talking till they cut me off, and because the longer I talk, the more effective I will be, and sometimes that's not true. So.
One of the right, it's. Sorry, Annabelle. Go ahead.
No. Just in terms of process, I participated in a tremendous Zoom meeting last week with 2,000 or 3,000 people, and one of the things that is really has to be really clear is that I hope that we don't. Well, maybe I shouldn't say it this way, but including a chat room with that makes it very difficult to listen to people, because if people are using the chat piece of it, then it becomes real complicated. I don't know if we can we eliminate the chat piece?
So what we did at the Planning Commission meeting was to make it clear to people that they could address questions or concerns about the process to staff through the chat or questions function, but that interaction with the Planning Commission would only happen through when somebody was recognized by the chair and their microphone was turned on for them to testify directly to the Planning Commission. So we essentially separated those two functions. The chat was only with staff who was, running the meeting and dealing with technical issues.
That makes sense. Yeah.
you won't have to worry about that. And back to Commissioner Malone's point about limiting the length of the hearing. So with a public hearing, we can't really limit the overall length of the meeting because there's an expectation that anybody who has signed up to testify will be allowed to testify. But we can limit the length of individual testimony,
Yeah.
which should have the effect of then limiting the overall length of the meeting. So again, by setting a 3-minute time limit on individuals, and we have people register ahead of time, so we will have a sense of how many people intend to testify. And definitely your points about encouraging people to not repeat testimony, that can be part of the script that leads into the hearing, where just indicate if you're in favor or if you agree with somebody's previous points as opposed to reiterating, rehashing them.
That makes sense.
Rebecca, did you have a comment? Just showing us your pen. It's a nice pen. All right. So on your two questions, I think we're recommending a 5:30 start time, 5:30 in the evening. And then there will be an opportunity on October 6th meeting for oral and have already submitted written testimony. So are we?
So that would be the decision date would be the 6th of October?
No.
No, the decision date is the 20th, but I mean, we would say we're not taking anything after 10/6?
We would receive written testimony up until approximately the 16th of September.
Okay,
Then we would compile, staff would compile all of that and submit that to you 2 weeks ahead of October 6th. And then on October 6th, you would receive oral testimony through GoToWebinar, where we could control the flow of information. And then that would conclude the testimony portion of the hearing. The applicant still has an opportunity to submit a final written argument within 7 days after that.
Okay.
And so then you'd reconvene on October 20th to deliberate, to review the applicant's final written statement, and then to deliberate and come to a decision.
Got it.
And there would not be testimony received on that October 20th hearing.
Okay.
Yeah, I understood that. Just want to make sure we were clear.
Greg, you mentioned cutting off the written testimony by 2 weeks ahead. Is it possible to shorten that a little bit and say sooner the better, but by a week or 10 days? I mean, 2 weeks seems like a kind of a long time, although this is a continuation of the process, so most people should be aware, but it is 2 week cutoff time before the meeting a reasonable length of time?
Yeah, I mean, that is a good question. Again, we have had several opportunities for written comments, and they will have 2 weeks from the time we mail out notification to submit those additional comments. So I think it is adequate. It also gets complicated for our internal processes with you to compile everything, get you a coherent package of information, and that give you enough time to review it all, as opposed to having information trickling in dribs and drabs. That makes it harder for you, I think. So my recommendation is to stick with that 2 week period for comments.
Okay, great. Thanks for the clarification.
Greg, this is Lilia. Sorry I'm not on camera. Quick process clarification from you. So the October 6th
deliberation, the public hearing, at that point, will that occur at the normally scheduled board meeting time, or will it be another evening meeting on the 20th?
Great question, Lilia. Thanks for bringing that up. That is a good question. Commissioners, it's really up to you. I would say that because there's not testimony involved, there is less reason to have it in the evening on the 20th. But it would potentially accommodate more people listening in if you had it in the evening on the 20th. So it's really your call, and it would be ideal if we could clarify that now so we can lay it all out in the notification. Technically, legally, you don't need to make that decision until October 6th, and you could state at the October 6th hearing, this will be continued to October 20th at such and such time. But it'd be ideal if we could include that in the notification that we'll be sending out shortly. So what is your feeling about that?
Well, as I recall, Greg, when we did the Wild Rose thing, we did do the final deliberation during the day, I believe, and then also with the Jackson Fraser project that we had it wasn't the increase of the urban boundary of Adair Village. That one, I think I recall, was also day, but I may be wrong about that. When we did with the final deliberation, even though there's a lot of people that want to know what that's going to be, I think that's what we did. But we could check the record for that.
Well, but we have really different circumstances. We're recording this meeting, broadcasting it, so the opportunity to, at people's leisure, to watch the deliberations, I think is, so I would recommend on the 20th of October to have this be part of our regular board meeting.
That's what I'm suggesting, that we don't set up another special meeting for that. We do it on October 20th, our regular process, and then as we do all our other decision-making.
Great, Greg. So I think that we're all here on the same page, that we're going to hear testimony on the 6th in the evening, and then deliberate and make a final decision on the 20th at the regularly scheduled board meeting.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Any other questions or clarifications? I will add, I would intend to update you at sometime in September, directly just to touch base before that October 6th date, so that there's a lot of moving parts to this. I want to keep it clear in all of our minds.
Okay.
But any other questions or comments at this point?
I don't think so, and appreciate you sending out the email with kind of the details. That's helpful. So we're looking at the right dates and right times, and appreciate all your efforts on working on this issue, and I think I'm looking forward to seeing the packet you're going to send over, and because I know we have a lot of concerned citizens, and I appreciate the effort it takes to write down your thoughts, and so looking forward to that.
Sure, and again, we don't have an appeal yet, so this may not come to pass, but if it does, we are prepared.
That's good.
And so thank you very much for that.
They have another week to appeal, is that correct?
Right.
All right. Well,
I did have a question for you, Greg. This is Teresa Farley. Will the testimony be coming to the development office, or is the board's office going to receive the testimony for October 6th?
So we can work out any details behind the scenes, but my recommendation is that the testimony come to the Community Development Department, and then we will compile it with a cover memo and agenda checklist and all of that.
All right, thank you.
That sounds like a good sequence, so that, like you say, so things aren't coming in dribbles, that you can have all the information and work your magic on organizing it. So I don't see any other questions, so thanks Rebecca and Greg, and stay tuned.
You bet. All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Have a good rest of your day.
Thank you. All right. Where are we? So we got 5.5 already, so now it's commissioner updates. Do you have any questions or comments, Annabelle?
No, I don't have anything right now, other than, not anything really.
Okay. The only thing I had was what I've already said about the governor's guidelines on getting more than K through 3 as possible to go to school at least physically, at least a couple days a week, and it's in our hands to get our COVID rates down significantly, and we don't have much time to do that. So once again, tasking our communication partners and our partners at the city and Oregon Health Authority, and to get us accurate data. And I heard earlier about our trends are headed in the right direction, but need to get significantly better. And then we have the opportunity to get schools more open, and I think that's critical, because it's schools / daycare, and I've heard from a number of parents wondering, well, which one of us are going to scale back on our job so that we can stay home and help our kids learn. So that's a tough decision, and anything we can do to soften that, I think, will be really valuable. Don't think I have anything else. So, Joe, do you have anything for us?
Commissioners, just 2 quick things. Number 1, staff is meeting with OSU tomorrow to talk further about how we can partner together to support OSU's efforts regarding student conduct. We've had one meeting several weeks ago, follow-up meeting tomorrow. I do anticipate that we will likely be coming to the board at a future date to consider the possibility of adopting 1 or more ordinances that will support the efforts that OSU is undertaking to ensure social distancing and face mask wearing. So I just wanted to put that on your radar. You may hear more about that on Thursday. There has been a meeting Thursday afternoon that's been added to your calendars. That is at 4:30 on Thursday, and that is a meeting with Corvallis City Council, where OSU will also be providing an update to both of the joint governing bodies. So 2 things OSU related this week.
Okay. And fortunately, we're not the first college school to open up. North Carolina took the lead in showing how not to reopen campus. They thought they were in good enough shape to really open things up and move students in, did dorms, and classes started, and it didn't last a week before caseloads were spiking, and they pulled the plug on campus learning and went back to all virtual. So I appreciate the efforts with our partners in the city and OSU in trying to carefully craft a strategy that has pretty good chance of success. I missed something. Fountain is working on a letter, I think, for us for sole proprietor agreement with Good Samaritan, and I neglected to ask Charlie about that when he was here. I don't think he was quite ready, but it sounded like, as with several other of our efforts, we need a quick turnaround time, so I would assume that would get to us by our next meeting, which is next month, September 1st. So if nothing else for the good of the order, I will adjourn our board meeting. And thank you all.
Question, where